In the early 1800s, the Bell family settled on a peaceful farm near Adams, Tennessee. Their land was rich, and at first, life seemed calm. But soon, strange events began to happen. It started with odd knocking sounds that echoed through the house at night. At times, the Bells heard heavy footsteps on the porch, yet when they checked, no one was there. Neighbors shook their heads, saying maybe it was the wind or wild animals. But the noises grew louder and harder to explain. Furniture moved on its own. Doors opened and closed without warning. Even the family's farm animals seemed agitated, as if they sensed something not of this world. Word spread through the nearby hills. Something unusual was happening at the Bell place. The Bells tried to go on with their daily chores, milking cows, tending crops, fixing fences, but they couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling. At night, the knocks and thuds grew stronger. Soon, voices started whispering their names. Rumors floated around. Was it a ghost or a mischievous spirit? As friends and neighbors heard more stories, they realized this was no simple prank. Folks began calling it the Bell Witch. During this time, many people believed in the power of spirits. Times were tough. Little towns were far apart, and sickness, bad weather, or failed crops often felt like curses. So when strange things happened, many jumped to supernatural explanations. The Bell Witch tale took root in this world of fear and mystery, capturing the imagination of everyone who heard it. Early 19th century Tennessee was a land of thick forests, winding rivers, and rough roads. Most families lived in cabins, grew their own food, and relied on each other for help. Big cities were few and far away, so people traded stories by word of mouth. Tales of ghosts, devils, and curses were common, especially when crops failed or someone died suddenly. Superstition and faith often stood side by side. John Bell, the head of the Bell family, had worked hard to build a life in this frontier. He cleared land for farming and became known as a steady, honest man. But his good name didn't protect him from the spooky events at his farm. As the strange activity increased, neighbors and travelers started visiting to see for themselves. Some heard strange voices or felt invisible hands tug at them. Others claimed they heard laughter echoing behind them in empty rooms. People around Adams whispered that the Bell farm was cursed. Perhaps John Bell had crossed someone or broken some hidden rule. Many tried to offer help, prayers, charms, or even blessings from local ministers. But nothing seemed to stop the knocks, the thumps, and the eerie voices. Through it all, the Bell Witch legend grew stronger. This was also a time when news traveled slowly. A single strange event might grow into a dramatic legend by the time it reached the next town. Because of this, the Bell family's troubles became the perfect tale for storytellers. The wide, wild landscape of Tennessee seemed to fit a ghost story like no other. People told and retold the events, adding details that made the mystery even more chilling. The earliest signs of the haunting were simple: soft tapping at the walls or floors, often late at night. The Bells checked for rodents or loose boards but found nothing. Then they heard whispers, like someone speaking just out of sight. Before long, the whispers grew bolder and even called out the family's names. This invisible voice seemed to watch their every move. Most disturbing of all, the voice showed signs of a real personality. It sounded playful at times, joking or giggling like a naughty child. Then it turned mean, hurling threats or insults. When John Bell tried to catch the source, he found empty hallways and dark rooms. Even the bravest neighbors started to worry. The voice knew things about them that it shouldn't have known, like personal secrets and private conversations. As the weeks passed, the Bells began to feel trapped by fear. The entity seemed to toy with them, moving objects, tugging at their clothes, and leaving them in a constant state of dread. The children complained of being poked at night, and sometimes they felt a cold breath on their cheeks. Family meals, once a cozy time together, now happened with an unseen intruder chiming in. The Bell Witch seemed happiest when causing confusion. Word of the Bell Witch spread like wildfire. Farmers coming home from the market talked about it. Riders passing through told others in taverns and small inns. Curiosity grew, and soon visitors from near and far made their way to the farm, hoping to hear or see something no one could explain. Many got more than they bargained for, leaving with goosebumps and shaky voices. The ghostly voice became the focus of the legend. While some spirits might appear as lights or shadows, the Bell Witch spoke with clarity, as if standing next to the listener. At times, it sang hymns or repeated sermons it must have overheard at local churches. Other times, it gossiped about neighbors or made fun of visitors. People said it could mimic voices perfectly, switching from a man's gruff tone to a woman's gentle whisper with ease. One of the Bell daughters, Betsy, seemed to be a special target. Friends later recalled how the voice would call her name over and over, sometimes in a soothing tone, other times in rage. Betsy was often teased or even hurt by this unseen force. The family grew afraid for her safety. She was a sweet, bright girl, and they didn't understand why this spirit singled her out. This added a note of sadness to the haunting. It wasn't just spooky, it was heartbreaking. As the Bell Witch continued to speak, more people became convinced it was truly supernatural. They asked it questions about the Bible or local gossip, and it answered with knowledge no one expected. Some folks believed it was a demon. Others thought it was the restless soul of someone wronged by John Bell. But no one could agree on why it came or what it wanted. Many tried to confront the spirit. Preachers prayed, hoping holy words would drive it away. Adventurers tried to outsmart it by hiding or sneaking around the house. Nothing worked. The voice sometimes mocked them, telling them to mind their own business. It seemed both clever and playful, feeding off their attempts to chase it out. The harder they tried, the stronger it became. With each day, the Bell Witch story became more dramatic. Some visitors claimed they saw objects float across the room or felt themselves pushed by an invisible hand. Others swore they saw dark shapes moving in corners. The farm soon became a gathering spot for thrill-seekers, writers, and even historians, all wanting to witness the strange events. Because people were so curious, stories got bigger and wilder. A bump in the night turned into a wild pounding that shook the whole house. A faint whisper turned into a haunting chorus of voices. Neighbors passed these tales along, and by the time they reached Nashville or other bigger towns, the Bell Witch was being called one of the scariest ghosts in America. Some folks traveled many miles just to spend a night in the Bell home, if they dared. However, not everyone believed. Some suspected tricks or lies. A few people thought the family was doing this themselves for attention. But those who stayed at the farm often left with pale faces and trembling hands, convinced that something real and frightening was happening. During this time, the Bell Witch story started to appear in newspapers and in letters across the region. It was unusual for a ghostly tale to get so much attention, but the details were too strange to ignore. This was more than a bump in the night. It was a voice that answered back and seemed to have its own thoughts. Whether they believed in spirits or not, people found this story hard to forget. No matter how thrilling the stories became for outsiders, daily life for the Bell family was filled with fear. The children hardly slept, dreading the whispers and pokes that often came at night. John Bell grew weaker, complaining of strange aches and a feeling that something evil was watching him. The spirit targeted him with threats, saying it would not rest until he paid for some past wrongdoing. Lucy Bell, John's wife, tried her best to keep the household steady. She comforted her children, cooked meals, and still greeted curious guests who showed up at their door. Yet, even she felt worn down. The sense of tension never left her, and many said they saw her cry from worry. Each day seemed like a new battle against an enemy they could not see. Betsy, meanwhile, suffered the most from the physical attacks. Friends said they saw her hair pulled or her face slapped by an invisible hand. It was heartbreaking to watch. Some nights she pleaded with the spirit to leave her alone, but it only laughed or sneered. Despite the family's attempts to protect her, Betsy had little peace. In a small community like Adams, people often looked out for one another. Yet, neighbors weren't sure how to help. Prayers were said, good wishes were offered, but the haunting raged on. Some folks suggested the Bells leave town, but that would mean giving up their land and everything they had worked for. And there was no promise the spirit wouldn't follow them. So they stayed, hoping that somehow the nightmare would end. Over time, visitors and thinkers came up with many theories about the Bell Witch. Some said it was the ghost of a neighbor who had argued with John Bell over land. Others claimed it was a demon set to punish the family for secret sins. A few believed it was a trick of the mind, maybe stress, illness, or fear had caused the family to imagine things. Modern scholars look at this tale and wonder if life on the frontier created the perfect setting for such a story. Families were isolated, dangers were everywhere, and there were few doctors or scientists to explain odd events. Rumors could easily become truths in tight-knit communities. When one person heard a creepy noise, they told their neighbors, who then listened for the same thing. Soon, a ghost story grew. Still, many accounts mention clear details, the voice saying things no one else could know, objects moving in front of crowds, and even the spirit imitating people's voices perfectly. Could so many witnesses be wrong? Believers in the supernatural point to these details as proof that something beyond our understanding lived in that house. Whatever the truth, the Bell Witch legend challenges us even today. It reminds us that some stories can't be solved with simple facts. Was it a true haunting? A trick? A mix of both? Each person who hears the story walks away with their own ideas, and maybe a lingering chill. As the haunting dragged on, John Bell's health grew worse. He was often bedridden, and friends worried he might die from the stress. In some versions of the story, the spirit claimed it would never leave him alone. Eventually, John Bell did die, and rumor has it the Bell Witch took credit for his end. Some say that on the night of his death, eerie laughter echoed through the house, as if celebrating a victory. After John Bell's passing, the spirit's activities began to fade, but it never fully disappeared. For a while, there were nights of quiet, but then the voice would return, mocking or warning the family that it could still cause trouble. Betsy also faced heartbreak, as her engagement to a young man fell apart. Some believed the Bell Witch had threatened the couple, forcing them to break up. Yet, life went on. The Bell children grew up, and Lucy Bell carried on the best she could. The farm remained in the family, though it was forever linked to tales of ghosts and curses. People came by, eager to see the spot where such spooky events had happened. Over the years, the story became part of Tennessee's identity, showing up in songs, books, and local speeches. Even though the actual events ended long ago, the Bell Witch left a mark that remains. The haunting changed the Bells forever, and it also became a cautionary tale for anyone who doubted the power of the unknown. In Adams, Tennessee, residents would tell the story to travelers, passing it down through generations like a worn family heirloom. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, newspapers and magazines had picked up the Bell Witch story, spreading it beyond Tennessee. Writers and storytellers found it perfect material for spooky articles and even short novels. As the country grew and modern technology arrived, people still loved a good ghost story, especially one as detailed and eerie as this. Across America, reading about the Bell Witch sparked debates about spirits and the afterlife. Some religious leaders saw it as proof that dark forces roamed the earth. Others warned that focusing on ghosts was sinful. Scientists wondered if group fear or trickery might explain it all. Still, no one could fully unravel the mystery, and that made the legend even more appealing. Radio shows and early television specials included segments on the Bell Witch. Over time, Hollywood noticed too, and several movies were inspired by the legend. Some stayed close to the original facts, while others added wild twists. In each version, a hidden force tormented a simple farm family, showing that terror can strike anywhere, even in a quiet town. Today, the Bell Witch story stands out among American ghost tales. Its mix of personal stories, written records, and community-wide fear makes it both fascinating and unsettling. Even the bravest listeners can't help but wonder, what if it were real? And could it happen again? In modern times, ghost hunters still explore Adams, Tennessee, armed with cameras and voice recorders. They search for cold spots, weird lights, and unexplained voices. Some claim to capture strange sounds on tape, whispery words or faint giggles that make them shiver. Others spend nights in the area, hoping to feel a touch on their shoulder or see a door slam by itself. Even skeptics sometimes leave with uneasy feelings. Local groups run tours and events focused on the Bell Witch, telling the old stories and pointing out locations connected to the haunting. These tours draw tourists from around the country, bringing a boost to the town's economy. Museums and folklore experts also collect documents, letters, and personal accounts about the legend. They compare notes, talk to descendants of the Bell family, and try to separate facts from fiction. Academics study the case to learn how legends form and how communities share stories. They note that the Bell Witch tale adapted over time. Early accounts mention certain events, while later writings add or change details. This is common with oral history. Each storyteller adds a bit of their own viewpoint. Yet the core of the story has stayed the same for 2 centuries. An unseen voice tormented a family and left a deep mark on their lives. Despite all this research, no one has found complete proof that the haunting truly happened. But the sheer number of witnesses and the detail in their reports make it hard to dismiss. Instead, the Bell Witch remains an open question, a puzzle that tests our view of what is real and what is not. The search for answers continues, and perhaps always will. Some believe it was a warning from God or a punishment for sins. They see it as proof that good and evil forces exist beyond our sight. Sermons have been preached about the Bell Witch, pointing to it as a lesson about pride, wrongdoing, or broken promises. Others think the stress of frontier life caused the family to imagine or exaggerate events. Harsh living conditions, lack of medicine, and fear of the unknown might have led to shared panic. Over time, this panic could turn bumps in the night into a powerful ghost story. Ghost hunters argue that the Bell Witch fits patterns of poltergeist activity, violent, noisy hauntings. They note that many people saw or heard things they could not explain, suggesting it was more than just fantasy or rumor. Folklore experts see the Bell Witch as a living legend. Stories often take on a life of their own, gathering new details as they travel from person to person. To them, the legend is important not just for its spooky parts, but also for what it shows about culture, belief, and fear. No single view can fully explain the Bell Witch. That's part of its charm and its terror. People keep returning to the story because it teases the line between reality and the unknown, reminding us how little we truly understand. After so many years, the Bell Witch legend still has life. It has been the subject of books, movies, TV shows, and countless rumors. The farm in Adams is a symbol of America's long history of ghost stories, one that mixes real family tragedy with an eerie mystery. Whether you approach it as a tall tale or a real haunting, it's hard to shake off the uneasy